Before Chae Soo-bin ever found the warm gaze of Yoo Yeon-seok, she stood in the delicate shadow of a love that left her both hopeful and hollow. With the world watching her rise as an actress of grace and charm, few saw the quiet battles behind her smile. At the heart of it was a man who once held her heart, Yoon Doo-joon. Their story began in the hush of privacy, hidden from the flashing cameras and demanding expectations of their respective careers. Yoon Doo-joon, an adult actor with a reputation for charisma and restraint, met Chae Soo-bin at a mutual friends gathering. There was something magnetic yet easy in the way they spoke. They weren't rushed, they weren't forced, and in that comfort, something quietly began. At first, there was joy. Genuine, unfiltered moments of connection. They would meet in tucked-away cafes, handwritten notes when schedules separated them, and share playlists as a form of emotional shorthand. For a while, the quietness of their relationship felt sacred. Sacredness slowly turned into secrecy, and secrecy began to feel like invisibility. Chae Soo-bin, though grounded and composed, carried a heart that longed to be seen completely, not just as an actress or a public figure but as a woman who wanted to be held without hesitation. Yoon Doo-joon cared. He was bound tightly by the image he had to maintain. The pressure of idol life meant discretion was not just preferred but required. To him, it was protection. To her, it began to feel like rejection. There were moments she would remember forever, moments that revealed the quiet ache of their differences. Times when she needed him to be present emotionally, only to find him unavailable. She stood backstage after a career-defining performance, scanning the crowd for him, only to realize he hadn't come. Flowers and a note. She smiled and said thank you, but that night, she cried in her car for an hour before driving home. Their conversations grew shorter, his replies delayed. Her heart, once so full of anticipation, started preparing for disappointment. The silence between them was not loud, but it was heavy. And worst of all, it was polite. There were no explosive fights, no accusations, just the slow erosion of intimacy by absence. Chae Soo-bin cried. She asked him, gently at first, then more urgently, if they could try to be more open. He would nod, kiss her forehead, and promise, but nothing changed. Wasn't that he didn't love her, but that his love lived within boundaries she could no longer live inside. The breakup was inevitable, not sudden, not dramatic. A quiet afternoon, a walk in a park, and the realization that loving someone isn't enough if it makes you feel smaller. They hugged goodbye with no promises to stay friends. There were no tears in that moment, just exhaustion and understanding. But afterward, the pain came in waves. Chae Soo-bin buried herself in work. She smiled wider in interviews, laughed louder in variety shows, but those close to her noticed the stillness in her eyes. Her roles became more intense, often reflecting the sorrow she didn't dare name aloud. Fans praised her emotional depth, unaware that she was pouring real heartbreak into fiction. Yoon Doo-joon, for his part, remained silent. He never spoke of her publicly, never reached out again. Maybe he thought it was kinder that way, or maybe he didn't know how to fix what he had let fall apart. Whatever the reason, his absence after the end was just as defining as his presence before it. Yet pain has a way of transforming people. It carves us out, yes, but it also creates space for something new. And for Chae Soo-bin, that something came softly, in the form of a man who would look at her not as a responsibility or a secret, but as someone to cherish openly. Yoo Yeon-seok didn't walk into her life with fanfare. He didn't try to dazzle or disarm. He was simply there, present, aware, deeply attentive. They met on a film set where long hours and layered characters had a way of revealing truth. From the start, his energy felt different. Calm. Safe. What struck Chae Soo-bin wasn't his charm or his fame, though he had both. It was the way he listened. He listened. When she spoke, he didn't just wait for his turn to reply. He considered her words as if they carried weight, as if her thoughts were worth savoring. She felt seen, not as a performer, not as a public image, but as a person. Started with friendship, quiet, steady, and real. He would bring her tea during night shoots, would laugh at his subtle, dry humor. They spoke about everything and nothing, books, childhood memories, fears, food. There was no rush, no agenda, just presence. Slowly, trust began to take root. Evening, while watching playback together, their hands brushed. He didn't pull away. He looked at her, searching, patient. She didn't flinch. She smiled. That was how it began, not with fireworks, but with the soft certainty that maybe this time, she wouldn't have to shrink herself to be loved. Yoo Yeon-seok never made her guess. He never left her waiting. When he cared, he showed it, not with grand gestures but with consistency. He remembered her coffee order. He texted her after stressful shoots just to ask how she felt. When she had a minor injury during filming, stayed with her at the hospital even though his schedule was packed. No cameras, no managers. Just him, reading a book beside her bed while she rested. What touched her most was how he never tried to own her light, he simply wanted to stand beside it. In interviews, he never name-dropped her, but those who paid attention could see it. The warmth in his voice when asked about his co-stars. The way his eyes lingered just a bit longer when she walked into a room. The public speculated. Of course. Photos surfaced. The internet buzzed. But Yoo Yeon-seok never panicked. Or asked her to deny or deflect. Let them say what they want, he said once, smiling, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Know what this is. That's enough. There was one moment that stayed with her, etched into her heart like a promise. They were at an industry event. Yoon Doo-joon was present. For a brief moment, three stood within the same orbit. Cameras flashed, small talk swirled. And then, as if the universe were holding its breath, Yoo Yeon-seok reached for her hand, not in a possessive way, not with bravado, but with quiet reassurance. She looked up, was already watching her. And in that gaze, she found something she had never known before, home. At night, as they left the venue, he didn't say anything grand, he just squeezed her hand and opened the car door for her. Doo-joon watched from a distance, face unreadable, but for Chae Soo-bin, there was no more conflict, no more waiting. No more what-ifs. Yoo Yeon-seok gave her the freedom to be loved out loud, not hidden, not hesitated. He celebrated her wins, comforted her lows, stayed close during the mundane in-between moments that truly build a life. Over time, she began to soften again. Her laugh became lighter, her gaze steadier. In her next drama, noticed a glow they hadn't seen before. It wasn't makeup. It was happiness. When asked in an interview about what love meant to her now, she smiled. Not the practiced smile of press conferences, but the kind that reaches the eyes. Love, she said, is someone who sees you at your quietest and still thinks you're magic. She had known pain. She had known doubt, but in Yoo Yeon-seok, she found love that didn't demand performance or perfection. Presence. Just honesty. Between the echo of a love that couldn't stay and the warmth of a love that chose to remain, Chae Soo-bin finally found what she deserved all along, a heart that didn't ask her to hide, but welcomed every part of her into the